the queen who laughed at myths. The great hall of xel'arah shined with golden lights. Warriors of all species stood in silence, their heads low, while the alien queen sat on her high throne, her long black gown flowing like smoke across the steps. Her name was xel'arah, queen of the Dravari Empire. Her face was calm, but her eyes were sharp and cold like a blade. A young alien general stepped forward, holding a small, glowing device. "My queen," he said, bowing low. "We recovered this from the ruins of Sector 8. Queen xel'arah waved her hand. The hall dimmed. The device activated, showing a strange video in the air. Humans in old war armor, fighting giant beasts, destroying warships with nothing but hand weapons. For a moment the hall was quiet. Then the queen laughed. It was not a soft laugh. It was loud and sharp, echoing through the hall. She stood and walked slowly toward the image. "Are these the so-called humans?" she said, her voice full of mockery. "These tiny, weak creatures with soft skin and no claws?" The generals around her stayed silent. "They fight like they do not fear death," the queen added, watching a human soldier run into fire to save another. "Either they are brave or foolish." One old war priest stepped forward. "My queen, the legends say." "Legends," she cut him off, turning sharply. "Legends are lies told by frightened fools. There are no humans left. They vanished before we were born." The priest lowered his head. But the queen wasn't done. She walked to the center of the hall and raised her voice. "I will prove to you all," she said, "that the human threat is just a myth. We will search the remains of their old worlds, burn what's left, and erase their name forever." The crowd roared in support. Chants of Queen xel'arah filled the room. Her eyes sparkled with pride. But far away, deep in the shadows of space, someone watched the queen's speech, in an old ship floating in the dead zone. A human listened. His face was covered in scars, his eyes tired but sharp. He didn't move as the speech ended. He whispered, "So, they forgot us. They forgot." He stood up, picked up a long blade from the wall, a relic from Earth's final war, and he said, "Let's remind them." Back in the Empire, the Queen began her mission. Fleets of ships spread across the galaxy. They searched dead planets, destroyed ruins, and recorded every piece of human tech they found. But nothing scared her. Until they reached Outpost 47. The outpost was supposed to be abandoned, but when the Queen's elite forces landed, something strange happened. Their signals went dark. No message, no sound, only silence. The Queen sent more troops. They also vanished. No screams, no traces, only cold silence. xel'arah frowned. "This is not possible," she whispered. The general beside her nodded. "Shall we retreat?" She turned to him slowly. "No. I will go there myself. I will see this ghost for what it really is." The Queen prepared her arrival. Her war armor gleamed, powered by the strongest energy source in the Empire. Her guards stood ready, holding plasma blades and shield walls. They landed at Outpost 47. The place was quiet, too quiet. The air was heavy. Ruins stood untouched, as if frozen in time. There was no sound of wind, no movement of life. Queen xel'arah stepped forward. "Show yourself, ghost," she said. "I am not afraid of shadows." Then, from the darkness, a voice answered, "But you should be." The guards turned, their weapons raised, but no one was there. Yet one by one, they began to fall, not with loud attacks, no blasts, no screaming, just silence. And then, nothing. Queen xel'arah stood alone, her heart racing, and then he stepped out. From the shadows, the human warrior walked into the dim light. His steps were slow, controlled, his eyes locked on hers. He held no gun, only a blade, and yet she felt fear. Not because of the weapon, but because he was real. A human, alive, standing in front of her, and her legs began to shake. The man who stepped out of shadows. The wind moved again. For the first time in years, Queen xel'arah felt it, not air, but fear, cold and sharp, running down her spine. She stood frozen, staring at the figure before her. The man was tall, his clothes old and torn but clean. Every step he took echoed like thunder in the empty outpost. The human warrior stopped a few meters away, his eyes locked on hers, not with hate, not with rage, but with something worse. Calm. Queen xel'arah raised her hand. "Kill him," she ordered, voice sharp. Her guards moved fast, but they never reached him. With one breath, the human disappeared. A heartbeat later, 2 guards dropped to the ground, silent. Still, their armor split like paper. What? A flash. Another down. The Queen's. Guards screamed and fired, but their weapons hit only air. The human reappeared beside her, his blade touching her armored chest plate. But he didn't strike. Instead, he looked into her eyes and whispered, "You mocked our name. Now remember it." Then he vanished again, leaving nothing but a scratch on her armor, a clean, deep line. Not through metal, through pride. xel'arah stood there, breathing hard. What just happened? Her elite guard was gone, all of them, and she hadn't even seen his full strength. Hours later, she sat alone in her warship, staring at the cut on her armor. She touched it again and again as if trying to erase it with her fingers. The general stood behind her, silent. "He didn't kill me," she said slowly. "No, my queen," the general answered. "He wanted you to live." She looked up. "Why?" The general hesitated. "To send a message." Across the galaxy, that message had already started spreading. From ship to ship, world to world, whispered on dark channels. A human was seen. He walked in shadows and destroyed an entire unit. Alien warlords laughed at first. Then another message came. A whole fleet gone. Not one scream. Only silence. Human silence. Panic began to grow. The Queen ordered silence. No news was to escape her empire. But it was too late. The galaxy remembered the old stories again. The ones about human rage, human loyalty, and human revenge. Queen xel'arah called her council together. "I will not be hunted by a ghost," she declared. "We will crush this creature and show the galaxy that the Dravari do not fear old myths." She ordered a special team, hunters, trained in dark space warfare, cold, deadly killers. She called them Black Fang. They had one job: find the human, destroy him, bring his head. Meanwhile, the human warrior sat alone in a small cave on a dead moon. His hands were wrapped in bandages, his blade beside him. A small device buzzed in his hand. He opened it. A voice spoke. Soft, female. "If you're hearing this, then Earth is truly gone. But our enemies are still out there. If even one of us lives, we are not extinct. Fight. Not for revenge, but for memory." He closed his eyes and whispered, "I remember." Then he stood and began walking. 3 days later, Black Fang arrived. They moved silently, landing on the moon with stealth pods. 12 warriors, armed, with the most dangerous weapons in the galaxy. They found the cave. They entered. Empty. But before they could speak, the cave door sealed shut behind them. A voice echoed inside the stone walls. "Welcome." Flames exploded from above. Walls shifted. Black smoke filled the air. The warriors screamed, but no one outside heard. Hours later, the Queen received a message. Just a picture. 12 broken helmets and one symbol drawn in blood. A star with 5 lines. The old symbol of Earth's last defense force. xel'arah stood silent, her hands shaking. She couldn't stop the whispers now. The galaxy was watching. Some laughed, some cheered, some prepared for war, and in her heart, a fear she never knew before began to bloom. Not just fear of a warrior, but fear of a truth. Humans were not extinct. They were awake, and one of them had chosen her. The one who remembers Earth. He walked through dust and memory. The human warrior moved like a ghost across the forgotten moon, his cloak dragging across old metal ruins. Once this place held a human outpost. Now it was just broken steel and cracked stone. He paused beside a shattered flagpole. The flag was gone. But he remembered what it looked like. Blue and white, stars and hope. His fingers brushed the rusted pole. Earth, he whispered. I haven't forgotten you. Behind him, a soft beep. He turned. A small drone floated near, projecting a weak signal. Your name, it asked. Identify. He stared at it for a long time, then said, Cassian. The drone blinked. Cassian Gray. Rank, Vanguard of Earth's Last Stand. Status, deceased, the drone replied. Cassian smiled bitterly. Not yet. The drone's light turned red. Threat level, unknown. Warning sent to Galactic Network. Cassian sliced it in half before it could finish. Too late. He looked up. He felt it. They were coming again. Deep in the Empire, Queen xel'arah stared at the blood symbol burned into her throne room wall. No one knew how it got there. No one had seen him enter. But it was there, a single star with 5 broken lines, and, under it, a message written in ancient human language, not revenge, memory. She clenched her fists. Enough, she growled. He thinks he's a ghost. I will show him what real power is. She summoned the Starseers, her secret council. Creatures that could predict battle paths using time itself. Tell me, she commanded. Where will he strike next? The Starseers glowed with cold fire. They spoke together. He will not strike where you expect. He will strike where it hurts, she frowned. My palace? The seers shook their heads. No, he will strike your name. 3 nights later, the Grand Library of xel'arah burned. The place that held every record of Dravari history, reduced to ash. No alarms, no witnesses, only silence. In the ashes they found a single thing, a human coin. Queen xel'arah stared at it for hours. What is he doing? She whispered. He's erasing you, the priest beside her said. The way you tried to erase him. Cassian moved planet to planet, quiet as breath. He didn't just kill, he reminded. On a trade world, he saved a slave child from a beating, left behind a human medallion. On a mining colony, he stopped a Dravari bombing with no weapon. Only a warning whispered in the dark. He was everywhere and nowhere, and the stories grew. He's not one man. He's the spirit of Earth. He's the last shadow before justice. In secret rooms, other species began to talk again. What if the humans return? What if they never left? Rebels lit torches under forgotten flags. Old songs were sung. Wars that had gone quiet began to breathe again. And the Queen felt it. Control slipping from her hands. She had mocked a ghost, but now the ghost had become legend. Again, one night. She stood alone in her private chamber looking out at the stars. Then she heard it. A knock. Just one. Soft. She turned fast. No one. But on her mirror, someone had written with ash. I remember you, xel'arah. She stepped back, heart racing. Guards, she screamed. None came. Then she realized they were already gone. Far away, Cassian sat beside a small fire on an ice planet. He looked at an old photo, torn and faded. A woman, a child, a planet behind them. Earth. He closed his eyes. He remembered the day it died, not from bombs, not from fire, from silence, from abandonment. They left us, he said to the stars, but we're not finished yet. Behind him, others stepped into the light, one by one. Humans, scarred, silent, strong, not many, but enough. They think only one of us remains, Cassian said. The others nodded. Let's keep it that way. He smiled, and they vanished into the cold night. The Queen's empire cracks. A single message reached the heart of the Dravari Empire, not through satellites, not through networks, but carved into the hull of a royal warship as it drifted, broken, into orbit. For every story you erased, we will write 10 more. Memory is stronger than fear. Queen xel'arah stood before the floating wreck, eyes wide with disbelief. The ship was one of her most powerful dreadnoughts, armed with starfire weapons, guarded by 1,000 elite warriors. Now it was scrap, and no distress call had ever been sent. He is not alone anymore, the old priest whispered behind her. You tried to burn their history, but now their memory is burning yours. The queen turned slowly, her voice trembling with fury. Find them. Meanwhile, deep within the caves of Varus Prime, Cassian stood before his small army. There were only 16 of them. Survivors of lost colonies. Silent ghosts of forgotten battles. Each one had a reason, a wound, a promise. Cassian walked between them, placing a hand on each shoulder. You are not soldiers, he said. You are reminders. Reminders of what? Asked the youngest, a girl with metal limbs and eyes that glowed blue. Cassian looked at the stars above the cave roof. Reminders that humanity did not vanish. We waited. He turned back. And now we write our memory on every wall they thought would never fall. On the edge of the galaxy, 7 Imperial stations went dark in one night. No alarms, no signs of attack, just silence. When scouts arrived, they found something chilling. Dravari soldiers asleep in cryopods untouched, no damage, no blood. Just one message on every screen. You ruled with fear. Now face something older, purpose. Queen xel'arah was breaking. She ordered random planets to be burned. Any world suspected of hiding humans. Flames covered the stars. Innocents screamed. But it didn't stop Cassian. It made him faster, sharper. And the galaxy saw it all. On the merchant world of Xi'an, a huge parade was planned to honor the queen. She herself would attend, to show that she still ruled with power. The city was covered in her symbols. Statues of her filled every square. But the night before the parade, something changed. Without warning, every statue cracked, not destroyed, not blasted, cracked, right across the eyes. And in the silence that followed, a song played on every speaker. An old earth melody, soft, haunting, one that told of homes lost and found again. The queen arrived in her golden ship to a city in silence. Not cheers, not screams, just eyes. Watching, judging, remembering. She stood on the stage. You worship ghosts, she shouted. I bring you order. No one answered, not even her own guards. And then from the crowd a small child stepped forward. He held up a simple object. A toy, shaped like a star with 5 lines, the symbol of old Earth. xel'arah stepped back. The crowd didn't move. They just watched, and somewhere above in the sky unseen, Cassian watched too. His voice whispered across hidden channels. You can't erase memory. You only teach it how to fight. That night, her top scientists reported something worse. Queen, our systems are failing. How? Our networks are being infected by something we can't track. Not a virus, not a weapon. It's data. Old human data. Memories, stories, files we deleted centuries ago. They're coming back. xel'arah's breath caught. You mean they're rebuilding history? No, the scientist said. They're making us remember. Cassian sat before a shattered console in an old bunker. He tapped a dusty button and smiled. They used machines to wipe us out, he said softly. But machines remember better than they forget. Behind him, the others laughed quietly. A young woman with burned skin added, You cracked the core code? Cassian nodded. Not me. My wife. Before she died, she hid every human file inside Dravari systems, buried deep, waiting for the right trigger. And that trigger was, he looked up. xel'arah's arrogance. The queen locked herself in the vaults, surrounded by steel and secrets, but even there she could hear it. Not voices, not attacks, stories, echoing through her empire, of humans who gave everything, of children who survived fire, of mothers who hid in ice caves just to write one final sentence about Earth. Those stories now flowed like blood through her systems, through her people, through her throne. And Cassian was not done. He had one more place to go. Her palace. The memory that walks into fire. The sky above the Dravery capital turned black. Not from clouds, not from machines, but from silence. The kind of silence that comes before a storm. Every sensor in the Queen's palace picked up the signal. A strange pattern. Not an attack. Not a weapon. Just a path. A single line of old human code, glowing red across the palace walls. I am coming. Queen xel'arah stood at the top of her tower, her heart a drum inside her chest. The city below was quiet. Too quiet. No horns. No fanfare. Her guards were tense, their weapons drawn, their eyes scanning every shadow, but deep down, she knew it wouldn't matter. Seal the palace, she ordered. Already done, said her captain. No one gets in or out. But he didn't believe it. She could see it in his eyes. Far below, the outer gates opened with a soft hiss. Not broken, not forced. They simply unlocked, and Cassian Gray walked through. No armor, no shield. Only a black cloak and a blade older than the Queen's throne itself. The Dravery army was waiting. 1,000 warriors, trained from birth, loyal, fearless. They aimed plasma rifles at him. He didn't stop walking. Halt, a voice called. You step any further and you die. Cassian looked up at them and whispered. Do you remember your first name? The voice stuttered. What? Your first name, Cassian said again. Not your rank, not your title. The name your mother whispered when you were born. The line of soldiers went quiet. He took one more step, and 100 rifles lowered. Inside the palace, the Queen watched it unfold. Why don't they stop him? She screamed. No one answered. Her voice echoed back at her. She turned to her advisors, and all gone. Their robes laid empty on the floor. Cassian entered the grand hall. The doors shut behind him. Walls covered in gold and blood stared down at him. Looked small, but the silence around him made him feel larger than the empire. On the throne, Queen xel'arah stood. No guards, no advisors, only her. You, she said, her voice sharp, are a shadow, a broken thing from a dead world. Cassian stopped halfway. You used to believe we were myths, he said. Now you hide behind stories to feel safe. She raised her arm. Lightning energy surged into her palm. I can burn you where you stand. Cassian looked at her calmly. Try, she fired. The bolt struck. Dust rose, and when it cleared, Cassian still stood. His blade had absorbed it. It glowed now, humming with energy, alive with memory. This sword, he said, was forged from the heart of Earth's last star. It remembers more than pain. It remembers truth. He walked forward. She fired again and again and again, but he didn't fall. The closer he got, the more her hand shook. Why are you here? She cried. Cassian stopped just in front of her. His voice was soft now. Because you tried to bury a people. He stepped closer. You erased our cities. Closer. Our names. Closer. Our children. His blade touched her crown. But you forgot something. She was crying now. Not from pain. From something worse, from knowing. What? She whispered. You forgot, Cassian said, that memory walks. It moves. And today it walks into fire. So others don't have to. Then he did something she never expected. He dropped the blade and turned away. What are you doing? She gasped. I'm not here to kill you, he said. I'm here to leave you alive. Why? So that every time you look at your throne, you remember that it almost burned, and that a ghost let you live. Cassian walked out of the hall. The Empire's guards didn't stop him. They bowed, not out of fear, but out of something new. Respect. Hours later, a small ship rose from the palace roof. Inside, Cassian sat alone, looking at an old datapad. On it was a message recorded long ago, his wife's voice. If we die, let it be known. We didn't vanish. We became stars in the stories. And if someone remembers us, we're not gone. He closed his eyes and whispered, "They remember now." His ship vanished into the stars. Behind him, the queen sat on her broken throne. Her crown tilted, her hands shaking, and all around her echoes of human songs filled the air. Not angry, not loud, just true. The day silence became legend. On the edge of the galaxy, stars flickered like nervous hearts. They said it began with silence. No horns, no explosions, no warning, just silence. And then everything changed. A week after Cassian walked out of the Queen's palace, the Empire began to fall. Not from war, not from blood, but from inside. The Dravari no longer feared him. They followed him. In cities once loyal to the crown, statues of xel'arah were pulled down, not with hate, but with quiet hands. No violence, just replacement. New symbols rose in their place, the five-lined star of old Earth. Not a flag of war, a flag of memory. Queen xel'arah sat in her throne room. The once glorious chamber now cold and empty. Her advisors were gone. Her armies no longer answered. The empire she ruled with fear had turned into whispers, and every whisper carried his name, Cassian Gray. On a hidden moon, Cassian stood before a growing crowd. Not soldiers, not rebels, just survivors. Alien, human, mixed bloods, lost tribes. All the forgotten ones who had no home. They had followed the stories, and now they stood before him, waiting. Cassian looked at their faces, tired, broken, but full of something he hadn't seen in years. Hope. He raised his voice. "You are not warriors," he said. "You are not destroyers." He stepped forward. "You are memory. You are the breath of those who were silenced. And now, you speak." The crowd didn't cheer. They stood still. And in that stillness, a movement began. The Queen tried to send messages to her remaining outposts. No replies. Only one word returned again and again. "Remember." Her screens turned black. Her ships stopped moving. Even the palace lights began to dim, like the past itself was turning its back on her. Cassian didn't strike with fire. He struck with truth. Every file they tried to erase, restored. Every human poem, song, child's voice war letter, last breath, broadcast across the stars. Even enemies of Earth, even old warlords, listened in silence. Because it wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about not being forgotten. And then the silence spread. One by one, planets stopped speaking. Not in fear, in unity. They refused to speak the Queen's name, refused to salute her flags, refused to kneel to a throne built on erasure. It was the largest protest in galactic history. No weapons, just silence. And it was louder than any scream. On that day, xel'arah walked the palace alone. She opened doors herself now, no servants left. She passed mirrors but didn't look. And when she finally reached the royal archives, she found something strange. The walls were glowing. Lines of human writing appeared across the stone. Old, deep, sacred. Those who forget the past are not rulers. They are children playing with matches in a library. She stepped back. The floor beneath her glowed too. You erase names, but names can come back. Her knees gave out. She fell, and for the first time, she wept, not from anger, from understanding. Cassian sat on the cliff of a mountain on an old Earth colony, looking at the horizon. A small child sat beside him. The child pointed to a broken satellite in the sky. Was that yours? Cassian nodded. Once. Did it fall in a war? Cassian shook his head. It fell when people stopped listening. The child looked up at him. But now they listen again? Cassian smiled. Yes, now. They remember. That night, across the stars, people lit fires. Not for war, but for memory. No banners flew, no armies marched. But in every quiet home, in every cold shelter, in every heart that once thought they were alone, someone whispered, I remember Earth. And that made all the difference. The last star, the first home. They came not in warships, but in silence. No flags, no demands, no fire. But everyone knew this was the end of something old, and the beginning of something greater. Cassian stood at the heart of the galaxy, on Gaia 1, a rebuilt station made from pieces of ruined human outposts. It floated like a scar among stars, glowing with soft light surrounded by thousands of small ships from every corner of space. Each ship carried stories. Each story carried memory, and every memory had one thread: Earth. He stood on the main platform, his cloak waving in the windless air. Beside him were not warriors, but teachers, builders, and children. His voice echoed into the stars. You called us extinct. You called us erased. But we are the root beneath your empire. And roots don't die, they wait. Queen xel'arah watched the broadcast from her empty throne room. Her crown was gone. Her name no longer spoken. Even the guards who once feared her had written human names on their armor. Names of children buried in forgotten wars. She touched her own face in the mirror, wondering if this was what losing felt like. But it didn't feel like defeat. It felt like release. Cassian didn't call for revenge. He called for remembering. He called for rebuilding. He called for a council of many, not ruled by fear, not silenced by power. And they listened. Aliens who once hated humans. Colonies who once watched. Earthburn. Even species who thought emotion was weakness. They listened. A new council was formed, not on a throne world, not in a palace, but in the ruins of an old human station, still half-burned, still cracked, still true. Each representative stepped forward and placed one item in the center: a Dravari dagger, a human star coin, a child's drawing, a broken chain, a seed from a dead planet. Together they built a circle around those things, and they called it the Circle of Memory. Cassian stepped down from leadership. I am no ruler, he said. I was just a reminder. They offered him power. He refused. They offered him legacy. He smiled. I already have it. You all carry it now. On the farthest edge of space, someone sent a signal. It was weak, but it reached Gaia 1. A lost human ship, thought destroyed 100 years ago, had returned. Inside were thousands of cryopods, families, children, scientists, all asleep, waiting. Cassian flew out to them himself. He stood before the cryoglass, his reflection older now, his eyes tired, and then one pod opened. A girl stepped out, blinking, shivering. She looked at him. Are we too late? She asked. Cassian knelt. No, he said. You came just in time. The galaxy wept that day, not with sadness but with peace. Statues of Earth's last soldier were never built. Cassian asked that no world carve his name in stone. Instead, he gave them a story. And in that story, humans were not gods. They were not monsters. They were simply people who refused to be forgotten. On the last day of his life, Cassian sat under a glowing tree grown from old earth soil. A young boy came running toward him. Cassian, Cassian, they said you saw the real Earth. Cassian smiled. I did. What was it like? He looked up at the stars. It was loud, messy, beautiful, and full of people who loved too hard and broke too often. Do you miss it? Cassian nodded slowly. Yes. But now, everywhere is a little like Earth. He handed the boy a small chip. What's this? A seed, Cassian said. Plant it, not in soil, in memory. When he passed, no alarms rang. No towers fell. No war started. But across the stars, fires were lit, and voices whispered one line. He walked into fire and left behind light. On Gaia 1, beside the Circle of Memory, a small stone sat quietly. No name, no crown, only words carved in human style. Earth is not gone. It lives in every voice that dares to remember.